Okay.
Majabahiwi, Wawakashikwe, Ningdijnakas. Pakwakanagonin, Nindonjnaba, Maigan, Nidodium. I want to tell a quote for you, and it comes from a Mi'kmaq woman who lives on the Lishtigush Reserve in Quebec. And she says that the language helps you think differently. It's a native way of thinking. If you don't have your language, how can you call yourself native? She was telling this to her children, and today many native people are trying to go back and learn their language. Without your language, you have no culture to speak of, and without your culture, you have no language. A lot of the language that we express also denotes what our culture is. So if, like, when I say my name, Majabahiwi Wawakashikwe, the Indigenous cause, what I'm saying is Running Deer Woman is my name. If I say it first, my name first, then everyone knows in the circle that I respect myself. I feel good about myself, and I'm having a really good day. If I happen to say Nindijna cause, Majabahiwi Wawakashikwe, an elder might come up to me later on in the day and say, "Are you okay? Are you feeling all right?" Because by saying my name last, it's letting everyone know how I'm feeling that day. I may be depressed. I may be just wanting to curl up in a little ball and go to sleep somewhere because I'm not feeling that good. So how we say our language and how we express it also lets everyone know how you're feeling and what kind of a day you're having. So without that, without the language, people can't really know how you're feeling, how you're doing that day, or even for several days. Part of my role as an elder in my community and in my nation is to try and bring back the language. It's hard for adult people, like I'm not fluent. I stumble over my words, but at least I'm trying. There's others out there that would love to try and get their language going, be able to learn it. So by helping them to learn, it's also helping them to learn their culture, because both of them are connected. And without one, you don't have the other. So what I like to do is I like to get them young, the children, when they're just little, because it's a lot easier for them to learn their language. They pick it up like it's peanut butter on the floor or something. Like they just pick it up and they just go with it. And if it's repeated to them short periods of time each day, then it'll eventually become that they'll be telling you how to say the words because they get it so quick. For the older generation, again, you have to do it in short periods of time. But as long as they have someone to speak to and repeat back, even if it's over the internet, they go into a chat room and they're able to chat with people in there to help them if they don't have anyone at home. It helps them to learn the language. But also by how they express, they have to learn how to express themselves when they're speaking the language. And you can't get that from a book. You have to be able to get it from an elder or a first speaker, which would be an elder nowadays, because most of our elders are few and far between that can actually speak the language. But everybody's trying to bring it back, which is good. Now myself, I am Algonquin. We used to call ourselves, before settlers came here, Onagok. And the reason we're called Algonquin is because when the first people landed here and they asked one of the nations, I think it was the Maliseet people, who were those people over there, they said it in their own language. So in their language, Algonquin meant Onagok. And Algonquin just stuck. And that's what we now call ourselves. Not too many people realize or know that we were actually called the other name, Onagok. Does it matter? Maybe. It might matter to more the older elders than it does the younger generation, because Algonquin is always what we've known. It's always what we've been called. To try and bring back the other one, the other way we called ourselves, you might get some resistance, and people would say, prove it. Prove that's what we were called. Well, it's kind of hard to prove when those elders are gone. The ancestors are now, that know that was there is gone. There's only a few of us that realize what we were called because it's been passed down. To bring that back, it might confuse them. It might turn them off trying to find their language. You could bring it back later on once they are speaking it and just say, this is how we used to say it. This is what it used to be. But like any nation, language evolves, as do the people. So it's revitalizing the language. Do you go back to the old way, or do you continue on the way it is right now? I think it would be better to continue on the way it is. But you can still bring in that culture into the language. Many of the songs that we sang are slowly being lost unless it's been passed down to you. And in the wintertime, now that the mini death is soon to be upon us, we never sang high-pitched songs in the winter because it would wake up the spirits that are supposed to sleep. So we sing the lower songs, and we sang it in our language. And there's only a few of those songs left that have been passed down. I think there's like 13 songs, that I know of, which is kind of it's kind of nice because 13 is a sacred number in the nations, and to have 13 songs handed to you, it's that were actually sung by my great-great-grandmother. So it's kind of nice to have them handed down. And eventually I'll hand them down to my granddaughter to carry on. A lot of our language, if you look at the cities, the names of cities in Canada and in the USA, a lot of those names are actually native names. They're from the language. Up in Canada, well, the name Canada itself is a native name. It meant the village. Yeah, it wasn't spelt with a C, it was spelt with a K, but it still sounded the same. And there's even our 10 provinces. I think there's only a few provinces left that are in the native language. You've got Saskatchewan, and that was Cree, means swift-flowing river. Manitoba, again, is Cree, meant the strait of the spirit. Ontario is Huron, or if you want to call them their correct name, Wyandot. And that meant beautiful lake. The province of Quebec is Algonquin. It meant narrow passage, where the river goes through in a narrow passage between the two countries. The Yukon meant the Great River, so they were associating it with the river up there, and the province was also named after it. And then you've got Nunavut, which is Inuktitut, and it meant our land. But there's lots of cities, towns, and even the words within our language, like toboggan, is Algonquin. Of course, everybody knows it's a sled that you pull behind you on the snow. So a lot of our language has been incorporated into the English language. And it's not just the Algonquin. We've got Ojibwe in there, Cree, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Cheyenne, Mi'kmaq. It's all in there. And when you're teaching your children the English language, you're actually also teaching them a native language because it's mixed in between. So the language has evolved and being used when it first came here. Toboggans were created by the native people. So when the settlers came here, they didn't know what to call it. And when they said, well, it's a toboggan, and showed them what it was used for, they kept the name. They kept the word and added it to their language. So in a way, it's like a, my word just went scooting out my brain there. It's it'll come to me tomorrow maybe, but it'll come to me. It's respect, basically showing respect to the people for that creation of the sled or toboggan. And it's kind of nice to have that in there. What does it mean to First Nations to revitalize our language? It means we're not lost. It holds our culture. If we can bring it back so that we have more speakers, then our culture isn't lost. It almost was during the last 500 years when we were oppressed by the people moving in and stealing our land. And in a way, they stole our culture for a while. But we're still here. We're still bringing back the culture. So they didn't, as Sir John A. Macdonald said, kill the Indian in the person. He couldn't do it. And neither can any government after him, and even the present day government. We're still here. We're still fighting for our rights and our culture. Many of the schools now are actually teaching the languages within that nation's territory. Up in Quebec, in Kitigan-Zibi, which is Maniwaki, from junior kindergarten right up to grade 12. It's all in the Algonquin language, and their secondary language is English. So for the first several years, up to grade 4, I believe it is, all they learn is Algonquin. And then from grade 4, English is put in for part of the day, till eventually they speak both languages, and they'll be bilingual, plus they have to learn French. So they'll be trilingual. So it's helping to revitalize the language. The Mohawks are starting to get their language schools back, and they're teaching it in Mohawk. The Ojibways, there's a few Ojibwe schools now that are all it's done in the full thing, Ojibwe with English put in the afternoon. There's now also language camps during the summer where you can go away for the weekend or for a week. And the first couple of days, yes, there's English thrown in there to help you out, but by the end of the week, it's all in the language that they're teaching. And they just don't teach the language, they're also teaching the culture, and they're teaching survival, crafts. But while you're sitting there doing your craft work, you're talking, you're speaking the language, because that's what we did when we sat around in a circle working. We are always either speaking to each other or singing or doing something, but the language was always there. Now, our language wasn't written. Before the Jesuits came here, we didn't have a written language. It was all oral. And many times you'll see, they're called petroglyphs on the rocks. You'll see artwork on the rocks. And those artwork are actually telling the person who's looking at them where to find something, who lived there, how many animals were taken that day, or even where to find the animals to get food. So it was a language. That artwork on the rocks is language. And it was extremely important. The children would watch and learn from their parents and grandparents and the elders on how to speak it orally, but they'd also learn how to draw the pictures in sand using a stick. And the hunters and the warriors would, to be quiet and not speak it so somebody wouldn't hear them if they were on a warpath, they would write it in the dirt using pictures. Like 3 wavy lines were a river, and they would have several teepees denoting a village. We always call them stick persons. Well, the stick person with just the legs was a man, and then they would put a triangle on the stick person for a woman. So all these things that you see, even on the rocks, the horses, the bison, they're all telling a story in the artwork as to our language. It was the way we wrote. And we could do it that way to any nation. If we didn't know their language, you could write it in the sand using the pictures, and they would know what you were talking about, because we all use the same pictures for the same words in that language that you spoke. So a dog, Anamush, may not be Anamush in Cree or even in Cheyenne. It may be something else, but to write the picture of the dog, you knew what he was telling about, or a wolf, Meegan. So it's all there. It needs to continue. It needs to be brought back for the young people to learn so that our culture will survive. And the culture is very important. Learning how our ancestors did things. We may not know it exactly as they did because they're not here to show us. We've lost that through the government oppressing all our culture, not allowing us to do it. So we have to bring it back carefully and slowly and consult with the elders that hid in the bush and kept their children in the bush and learn from them. And there's not too many of them left. So what we do have of our culture is what we have learned from those elders. But also our culture is evolving. Our language is evolving. Even the English language, you never had computer in your English language before, or iPad, or cell phone. These are all new words in the last 50, 60 years. So we've got to create words like television is a picture on a screen, or I can't remember what the exact translation of television is in the language, but it doesn't mean television. It means more than that. It means what it is. And the same as when we make up our sentences. It tells you what it is, not good morning. Well, we would say Minopamadison, which means a good life. And if you ask the question, how is your morning? We're actually asking, how is your life today? How is your life this morning? So it means more when we speak our language than what the English words are. And they can't be translated exactly because of the way we do associate our words with our feelings and our culture. Miigwech.